All right, everyone. Welcome back to the Co-Living Show. Today is super fun because we've got someone who's not just an investor, not just an agent, but actually someone who's lived every version of the Colorado house hacking playbook. I almost feel like I'm describing myself here as I'm reading this, but it's not me. It is our good friend, Tanner Pyle. But before we get to Tanner, I'm actually a little bit more concerned, Miller, about you and what you got up to this past weekend and what you've been up to these days.
Been burning the candle at both ends, I think is the saying. So you guys probably know if you listen to previous episodes, but Craig and I recently partnered up on a handful of different aspects of co-living, including the podcast, but also some management type ventures. So I've been helping on Craig's management side, getting all the properties up to speed in the way that we typically run them. And I'm taking over a lot of those operations over there. So it's been a lot of late nights. Awesome thing about it is my wife has been really great and number one, supporting me. Like when Craig and I were talking about partnering, I told my wife, like, hey, this is going to be at least 6 months of a lot more work than I've normally been doing and potentially even longer than that. So I set that expectation up front. But she's been great about me staying up late and us not necessarily going to bed at the same time all the time for this short period of intense work to reap a lot of rewards later. And this weekend, she was up with me pretty much every night. We were both had the laptops out, had getting takeout, had some Chinese takeout, and just hammering out on the laptops every night, trying to get all these properties ready to go. But yeah, so she's been great and keeping me going with it a little bit.
I tell you what, man, having an amazing wife is like the biggest asset you could have. So, man, choose your partners very wisely. Because, yeah, man, life just falls apart when your wife is not good.
Yeah.
I don't really know from first. I can't speak from first-hand experience because mine is also awesome, but I've seen it. Yeah.
Yeah. And I guess only last thing I'll say on that is, I mean, it hasn't always been that way. There's been times where we're fairly young in our marriage, right? 3-ish years now. Definitely the first year or so. I think there was a lot more pushback because she hadn't, as far as like the business things I wanted to do, because she hadn't seen the fruits yet, right? I had been planting a lot of seeds, but we hadn't seen any results yet. Stay strong in it. And as you go on, maybe relay those wins to them. And yeah, now she's totally supportive. If I have some crazy idea, she's like, yeah, it'll probably work. Or maybe not that, but he'll try enough things to where one of them will work. And she's not worried about it anymore. Instilling that confidence a little bit.
Yeah, it's good that you earned that trust. Awesome, man. Let's talk a little bit about Tanner now. So Tanner, right, Colorado investor, agent, house hacking guy. He's got hands-on experience running some co-living himself. What'd you think of Tanner today?
Yeah, so I've known Tanner for a long time. He was actually the very first meetup I went to in Colorado, actually, I met him at. So we moved here in 2022, April. In May, I went to a meetup here in Colorado Springs that was on meetup.com or BiggerPockets meetup page or something like that. And Tanner was a brand new agent at the time, was walking around. We got connected. I just started asking him about bars in Colorado Springs because I was brand new and like straight out of college. I'm like, hey, where are the best bars? And that's pretty much all we talked about. And I even had a different agent at the time, but a couple years later, things lined up and we'd become good friends at that point. But yeah, so he's helped us close of our 7 co-living properties here. I think 4 of them he helped us close. So yeah, super knowledgeable. He's helped us with all of our stuff, a lot of the stuff.
Awesome. Would you use him again?
Would use him again. Yeah. In fact, we will use him again.
Boom. There you go. Awesome. I'm super pumped to talk to Tanner. I think I first met Tanner. Shoot, I don't know. I think it was actually at BPCon in 2021 or something. Or maybe it was 2022. I can't remember the exact year.
I think I know this better than you. So whenever I first met Tanner, or a couple months in and we started hanging out more, he had just gotten back or a year ago or whatever from the Orlando BPCon. And he said he met you there and you guys sat next to each other at some dinner and got to talking and he came on your old show. And at the time I was like, no way. Like you met Craig Curelop? No way. And now here we are.
Yep. That was I do remember that dinner. So I met Tanner. And then we just always been in touch. Not as much as you and Tanner have been, but yeah, just a really good dude. I've never had any sort of like weird thing or anything. Like he just seems like a straight, really good guy to hold your hand through the next investment. And so I'm excited to get into his story. So let's bring on Mr. Tanner Pyle. Tanner Pyle, welcome to the show, my friend. How you doing today, man?
I'm doing good. Thanks for having me. Good to see you both again.
Yeah, good to see you too. I feel like we're having like a little rendezvous. We're just missing Justin out of our BP pod in the rooms.
Really what's happening here is Craig's third wheeling because me and Tanner hang out all the time. So Craig's kind of forcing his way into our friendship right now, I think.
Yeah.
I have shared a bed with Craig though, and with you too.
That's true. Separately, it wasn't one gigantic bed. This was over 2 different occasions.
Does that make us Eskimo brothers, Miller?
By one degree of separation, me and Craig are now yeah, because actually Craig and I have never been in the same bed together, and we're like
No.
partners. But me and Tanner have, Tanner and Craig have. So
If A equals B and B equals C, then A equals C. So technically, Miller, we have been
oh
in the same
yeah,
bed together, right?
yeah. I do forget this is like a communicative property of math, or is it associative? There's some of those. You guys remember?
I don't know. That was some proof. That was like the only proof I could actually figure out in geometry class, and it
Oh
stuck
yeah.
with me. Anyway, Tanner, welcome to the show. We'll put our geometry besides us, and what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. So anything after what you know now needs to stay there. Tanner, for the listeners that don't know you yet, why don't you tell them a little bit about you, what got you into real estate, and how are you involved in co-living?
So I'm a real estate agent in Colorado Springs. I've helped Miller buy a couple of his co-living properties. Have done co-living when I house hacked all of my properties. So I house hacked 3 of them so far, and a condo, duplex, and now a fourplex. Once I moved out of them, I didn't keep on doing the co-living model just because it didn't work for the location of the property, and I went down the short-term rental route. Ended up working out better. And so still have all those properties doing short-term rentals and helping people buy co-living properties and investment properties in the Colorado Springs area.
So why did you decide to go short-term over co-living? Usually people are doing the opposite these days.
You're pitching to the wrong crowd here, Tanner.
Yeah, I wouldn't recommend people to buy short-term rentals nowadays because the numbers just do not work. But at the time, 3-4 years ago, I had bought my duplex and then my fourplex. It made more sense in the location to turn it into a short-term rental. And that was when short-term rentals were still up and coming. It was on the tail end of it. And the numbers just worked better with the property layout because there's good parking, but not a ton of parking to where it can work best for co-living.
Yeah. So for the listeners out there listening, whenever you talk about this fourplex that you bought, it's a really cool property. It's like a huge, gigantic fourplex mansion. Can you explain maybe why does lend better towards being operated as a short-term rental or a mid-term rental versus co-living, so people know what sort of property characteristics to look out for and why you didn't rent it as co-living?
Yeah. So my fourplex, I bought doing owner financing as well, which is another story we can talk about. But the layout of it is it's one big like old 1900s build house, and there's different doors that separate it. So we can open it up from being a 5-bedroom, 3-bath to a 7-bedroom, 4-bath just by combining all the units together. So you can rent out for a larger property. And we have a lot of bedrooms, but there's not a ton of parking to allow for where it could be good for co-living is the main difference. It is near Colorado College downtown, but I'd say that's the biggest thing is that the parking is not best for it. You could probably make it work, but mainly the layout of the property being split up into 4 units, and some of the bedrooms are weird. It's not like the best door on the bedroom either, since it's an old 1900s property. We would have had to redone all of the doors to make them so that it could be properly secured for a co-living property.
Can we go a little bit into just like the numbers of this property and like analyze it as you would a co-living versus a short-term rental? So like Tanner, if you could talk about what you bought it for, how much you put down, what your monthly mortgage is, what you're getting in rents, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. So I bought it owner financing at 1.3 million, and my down payment was 10%. But I also financed 100K of the down payment with the owner on top of that. And then so my portion that I brought to the deal was 30,000, but I was also the agent, so I got paid 25,000, and so I only brought $5,000 into the deal. And then it was financed at 4% interest rate on 90% of 1.3, and so I pay around 5,500 for that. And then the owner financing of the down payment is just like a hard money interest only. For 100K, I pay 975 on that. And then I had to remodel the entire property, which has been about 150-ish, we'll say, as of right now. And I pay about 975 for that monthly. So all of that added up there comes to being around 7,500-ish, I want to say. Something like that.
I was doing that math and we came out to about the same numbers.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then there's utilities on top of that too. If we want to calculate that I kind of just wrap into everything, which it fluctuates because it's on a boiler. And the summertime, we have to pay a lot for electrical for the air conditioning units. But then the wintertime and like spring, fall, we don't have to pay as much because it's nice out and it's just the water getting rotated. So we don't use as much electricity. So I'd say probably on average like $650 is how much it ends up being. And then for rent, since it varies so much for short-term rentals, I always look at it on a yearly basis. And for this one, I want to say it was around like 90,000 for this past year of this property only, not combined with my other one too. And summertime is pretty high, and then wintertime dips off pretty good. And then I live in the property too. And so the goal of it is just to live for free in this one.
Okay. So just to give a quick recap, and let me know if this sounds totally off to you, but you bought it for 1.3 million. You were able to negotiate a seller financing type deal, which is pretty cool. So 100K down, you financed the 100K through the seller. So did you get the like $1.2 million loan from a bank?
No, that was owner financed.
Okay. So it was owner financed by the same guy. So he owner financed like almost the whole thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Tanner, can you explain those two bits of owner financing? Like why is he funding 1.3 million minus the 100K and then financing the 100K down payment separate?
Yeah. So the 1.2 basically that was like our original thing that we talked about. That's like the main loan, the 30-year loan is what that is. And then at 4%, that's what that portion is. And that's on a 30-year amortization, but there's a 10-year balloon on it. So after 10 years, then that has to be refinanced or fully paid, which we're only at year 3. The 100,000 that was for the down payment, that one was done. I was going to have someone else do it, but they couldn't do it. So I just talked to the owner and was like, hey, are you interested in order to make this happen? And they really wanted to move to the mountains and get it sold. So that's why they were open to making it happen. And that one is just the down payment. It's more like a private money loan or like a HELOC, you could almost call it, with the owner. And that one's at 9% interest only. So I only pay interest only payments, nothing towards principal. And that one's only for 3 years.
In doing your math, you bought this in like at the end of 2022?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So rates were like they were on their way up. They're much more than 4% at that time. How did you approach the seller and negotiate, or like, how'd you even get him to do a seller finance deal with you?
It was on the market for almost 100 plus days. And I had been sending out mailers and calling people, trying to get someone that wanted to do owner financing with me, but I was having some issues. And I was like, it's been on the market. Let's just look into the numbers and figure out what we can do. And right in our first conversation, I was like, hey, I'm looking to do a low down payment and a low interest rate. That's how I'm going to be able to make it work. And it's a lady, and she was also the agent and the owner, which I think helped out a ton. Because then she was like, yeah, come check it out. Let me know what you think, and we can chat about it. And then I looked at it, talked to her, and since she was the agent on the deal too, and she got to know me a little bit, we started to build that relationship. And I met her husband and her dogs just a couple of times, and we just slowly kept getting to know each other better. And she wanted to help me out and give a young person a chance at getting started in real estate. And that's why they ended up wanting to do the deal.
Awesome. I love that. I love, Tanner, I love how you were like you were very persistent. Yeah, it wasn't, you said it wasn't working out. You were calling a bunch of people, and oftentimes it's like the 100th, 200th, 300th, 400th phone call to the person. And then it may not even be that. It may just be like you getting those reps of the 100, 200, asking 300 times. And then finally, like, you meet someone somewhere on the MLS or at a meetup, and you know how to actually describe what it is like to have seller financing in a digestible way.
Mhm.
So then you can at least you can identify the opportunity a lot quicker.
Yeah, because
Good
once
for
I
you, man.
was finally talking with her, I knew everything that I wanted to do, and it just went a lot smoother, and she knew that I knew what I was doing too.
Yep. Yeah. Fake it till you make it.
Yeah.
So Tanner, when you talk about this acquisition, I think you talked about a handful of special tools that you had in your tool belt that you were able to deploy. Things like you were an agent, right? And you were able to use commission and apply that commission. It was seller financed on kind of two different ends. Are there any acquisition tools from this acquisition that you think are very applicable to a beginner in co-living? Like if they're struggling to make the numbers work, are any of these tools that you pulled out applicable for a beginner and like something that you would recommend that they start learning about and starting to use?
For a beginner, I probably wouldn't recommend going down the owner financing route just because there's a lot more you need to know just about standard loans and how to operate the property before you actually looking down that. I'd say that's more like a second, third property type of a thing to do. I think the biggest one is getting reps at running numbers, because the more and more you get reps at running numbers, then nowadays I can just look at a purchase price of a property and be like, yeah, this isn't going to make sense. And how many bedrooms it has, and based off the square foot, I'm like, there's likely we can't add rooms to this property based off of the square foot to hit the number that you need to hit for this purchase price for it to make sense. And you just get better at that with time and more reps.
So you think that some of the things that made this deal special, maybe they are more advanced tools that you picked up over time. So I guess maybe that's the learning lesson here. Tanner did buy a duplex prior to this, and you didn't have any. It wasn't seller financed or anything like that, right? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So in the beginning, you might just have to get some like super standard base hit reps in. But over time, you pick up on sub 2, you pick up on seller finance, you pick up on using your agent commission, and all that can sweeten it later. But I think it's important that you got the first deal done, right, with nothing crazy, and then you got better and better over time.
Yeah, and my first property that I ever bought was just a 2-bedroom, 2-bath condo. There's nothing special about it, and I used a FHA loan in order to do it, and it wasn't cool with short-term rentals or co-living or anything at the time.
Do you still own that one?
I do. It's just a long-term rental.
Long-term rental. There's something to say. Stop trying to overcomplicate things, and stop trying to like hit home runs on like your first deal by trying to like couple together a subject to seller financing or co-living. Just keep it simple. If you're able to, buy a house hack. It's so simple. 3% down. Buy it. Rent out the rooms. Keep it really simple and just understand like how real estate works and what it's like to be a landlord. That goes so much further than all this cute, silly stuff. Get the cute, silly stuff later as you start to grow. Tanner, I want to just like recap this deal real quick. So $1.3 million purchase price. Your monthly payment on this thing is about $7,500, but after utilities, I calculated about maybe like a little over $8,000 all in, and you're bringing in $7,500 a month while living there. So effectively, you're paying like $700 a month to live in a unit, which is pretty good. Basically, you're just paying for the utilities.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so like that's how that works as a short-term rental. Now I'm curious how would that underwrite as a co-living? So let's pretend Airbnb is illegal. Short-term rentals don't work. So like you have to put a co-living. What do the numbers look like there?
Yeah. We have 8 bedrooms total and 4 bathrooms.
Okay. Could you add any more bedrooms?
If you took out the living room, you could probably put 2 there.
Okay. So you can make it like a 10-bed, 4-bath?
I could, yeah. The tricky thing is it's boiler radiant heat, and so one of those needs to be in each of the bedroom on the split when you do divide it, and they're just tricky to move or add in general is the only thing there.
Okay. What would those bedrooms run out for in Colorado Springs? Just roughly, like average. I don't want to go too in depth, but
yeah, so at $750.
$750. Okay. So then $750 times 8, you're looking at what, like around $6,000 in rent on a $7,500 payment. Yeah, so definitely not as good as a short term for now. So confirmed.
For now.
But not a horrible, like stuff did hit the fan, right? Like not a horrible second option. Miller, go ahead.
Yeah. So I think that we've seen in Colorado Springs, like short-term numbers have changed a lot. Co-living has changed a little bit too. Like we've had rents decrease a little bit, but we've seen it a lot bigger on the short-term side. I think the very special thing about Tanner's property is it's very large compared to other properties, high bedroom count. Well, you can rent it out to an entire, it sleeps 25 people or something technically, Tanner?
24, yeah.
So we have seen, I think Tanner's actually been pretty stable and successful with his short-term rental, where we've seen 95% of people in Springs not be as successful on the short-term side, just because Tanner's like the only supply pretty much for this product. Whereas we did see a lot of 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom, 3-bedroom type units come online on the short-term side, and their revenue got halved. Pretty devastating. So honestly, I think Tanner's kind of killing it with this one. It is a smidge ahead of co-living, but it's a pretty dang unique case.
The one thing I would add to that is that when I was looking to buy my next property, since the brokerage I work for does short-term rental property management, they manage all of it for me too. And so they were seeing that 1 to 2 to 3, even 4-bedroom properties aren't having that like large $80K plus, even pushing $100,000 at times type revenue, unless you were hitting the 5, 6, 7, 8 bedroom range. And so that's why I was okay, you have to go big, you have to get those big properties. And since I can have 8 bedrooms on this one, and when it's not rented out fully at the 8 bedrooms, we can divide it up and still get those smaller revenue amounts on the property, is really what makes it push and be over the 80,000 metric mark. And it holds at that point too, just because if you look on Airbnb in Colorado Springs, there's not many places with 7 bedrooms plus in the area, especially in the downtown area too, where you can access everything downtown and get to the west side for all your hiking needs too.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think Tanner was really able to play his niche really well with his acquisition. But moving more into the co-living type info, Craig, are you cool to roll into more?
One other thing we forgot to talk
Okay.
about that makes this property cool is there's
Yeah.
two-car garages that face the back alley, and I rent those out too. And so that's what makes me live for free. If you add in that income too, I get about $450 a month on average for those and I've rented them out to one guy and to them each separately too. And so that's the other like cool thing about the property.
Okay, so let's actually talk about garages. I know Craig's probably tired of this because I brought it up every episode we've recorded so far, but this is actually a different spin on the garage. So originally when we were doing co-living, Tanner was our agent pretty early on, probably halfway through our first set of acquisitions, Tanner came in. And I don't remember if we were really doing anything with the garages yet. I don't think so. And Tanner mentioned that he was renting out the garage at this fourplex, but not as in finishing the inside of the garage and renting it out in a livable sort of scenario. You're renting it out for like storage, work, car storage, that kind of thing. Okay. Can you talk about how that's gone and how you found those renters? And yeah, if you've had any issues with renting out the garage that way, because we do that a lot in co-living. It just depends on our garage setup. Sometimes we are building it out and renting it as a rentable or as a livable space. And sometimes we're just renting it as storage. So how's your experience been on the storage side of it?
Yeah. Since the rest of my property is Airbnb, I don't really have anyone to rent it out that lives on the property. And they face the back alley, so it's almost completely separate, and they're detached from the property too. The backyard separates it, and so they don't really have to interact with any of my guests that are here. And I listed on Facebook Marketplace, and I get a lot of people that would reach out. The first time I did it, I had probably 30 people that were reaching out. The second time I had probably 15, 20, I would say, just because the time of the year made a difference on what people were looking to do. And the first guy was there for a year and a half. He rented his stuff there. We slowly increased it over time, but he was a solid tenant. He worked on his cars. The new people I have in there, they use it for storage of typically cars. But what I have noticed is that there's a lack of like garage space where guys that are into cars, into fixing on engines and automobile stuff to pay an affordable price and still do what their hobbies are. They don't really turn it into a business as much as they have it for like their own hobby stuff or storing vehicles type of a thing. But yeah, there's definitely been a demand for it every time I've had a vacancy.
Yeah, and so Tanner's renting it for $400 or thereabouts a month. And that's pretty much what we're getting on the co-living side too when we're renting out our garages. So a little bit different, right? We're renting it often to existing tenants. So Tanner said that was like maybe one limitation on the short-term side, right? The existing guests don't need to rent this thing out, the garage long-term. On the co-living side, we can do that. Like we have a really good renter pool for the garage already existing at the house. Now, if no one wants to take it, maybe you do have to offer it on Facebook and find someone outside like Tanner did. But usually we're getting about 150-ish bucks a month per bay in a garage. So yeah, $300 extra per month if there's a 2-car garage. That's an extra $4,000 a year. If you were break even on cash flow and all of a sudden now you're positive just because this one little thing, just like one little tweak, just renting out the garage spaces tends to work out pretty well.
I will say, like, after buying a handful of properties, some with garages, some without garages, I pretty much going forward would probably only buy homes with garages going forward. One, I think resellability is really great. Two, having that additional option for storage, especially with co-living, is huge. And three, you've got, if there's ever a time where like buying property doesn't make sense and you want to get more juice out of your current portfolio, you've got the option to convert. So I think garages provide tremendous flexibility. And also usually with garages comes bigger driveways or driveways in general. And of course, parking is a big thing. So yeah, I'm definitely team garage.
The other thing I would add about garages is that they can easily be converted into what we call ADUs in Colorado Springs. And they just allowed where you can do that more freely. And there isn't such harsh zoning restrictions on it. So that's another play a lot of people have the option to do with the garage is turning it into an ADU, which is a separate living space that the city is for doing in Colorado Springs right now.
For sure. Love that. All right, we got to pivot here. I'm sick of hearing about garages and your short-term rental shenanigans, Tanner. As a co-living agent and all that, like how did you coin yourself or become the co-living agent of Colorado Springs?
Thanks to Miller, really. He was the first one that kind of did it without living in the property itself, because I only ever did it while living in the property. And then I had more meetups, and Miller's come and spoken at the meetup and just talked to more people and invited more investors in town to the event. We met more people that were doing co-living, and more people started asking us about it. And I just kept helping more and more people do co-living and doing house hacking, which is the same thing as co-living. You just live in the property versus not living in the property. And it's very easy to go from house hacking to co-living. You just set it up and then remove yourself from it and you're good to go.
Cool. So what do you like? The client comes to you, right? Hey Tanner, like I want to buy a co-living house. I'm pre-approved for 600,000. Like, where are we? What are we doing? What are we looking for?
Every week I sort through properties that have decent parking. And so there's maybe 25, 30 on there. Most of them tend to be on the east side of town where there's more parking is easier there. They typically have larger driveways and you're near the military bases too, which is a big component to co-living in Colorado Springs. And I just start going from that list. And, okay, these are the ones that have good driveways for parking because you need ample parking. And then I go based off of square foot, and around the 450 range is where we'll end up being at, and seeing how many bedrooms we can fit in each property to where it makes the most sense. And if they're going to house hack it versus if they're going to go straight co-living. Because I think if you do go house hacking, you can have a little bit more flexibility with how many bedrooms you need to have in the property.
Yeah, so can I say something building on what Tanner said there? This doesn't exist in all markets, but one really sweet spot that we found for co-living with Tanner's help, he was mentioning a lot of the parking is out east in town. Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit about Colorado Springs, but this framework can apply to other places as well. A sweet spot for co-living that we found is the further away, if you can find this is like the secret sauce, the further away you get from the town center, right? Usually the cheaper properties get in general. At the same time, you're probably also getting bigger properties because the further you get away from town, the newer these properties are as the expansion has occurred. So they're newer, they're a little bit cheaper, they're on bigger lots. Often is what we see in Colorado as you get further away from like the 1920s builds in the middle of the city. So that all sounds awesome, right? If you can get further from town, cheaper, bigger, more parking. The only thing that can really hurt you there is if there's not a source of employment as you get further away from town. So if you can find the secret sauce of getting further away and there's a source of employment too, we found that really has skyrocketed what we can do with co-living because we can buy cheaper houses that are newer, more parking. So look for something like that in your city. So in our case, the further we get from town, we start to hit military bases, right? Which is an incredible source of employment for co-living renters. Another thing that you can see a lot when you get further from town, sometimes there's airports on the edge of town, right? That's another example of that. So maybe keep that secret sauce in mind because we've seen that work really well in Colorado Springs.
The other
Boom.
thing to note is that when you go further away, it depends on the direction. Because if we go further north, prices increase a lot. But if we go further east, the prices don't increase as much. If you go further south, the prices decrease a lot more, but it's a lower class area.
Yeah,
100%.
so it's like a perfect storm out east. And it's a framework that can apply to other markets too.
Awesome. When you're finding these homes, obviously price is a thing, square footage is a thing, like bedroom count is a thing. Is there a bedroom count that you won't go under, you won't go over?
I'd say typically if it's under 6, 7, it probably is too low. Didn't mean to do that. I think 8 is the sweet spot. Typically, if you can find something that's like a 5 or a 6 and where you can make it to 7 or 8, I think that's about the sweet spot to make all the numbers work, especially for your first time. If you want to try and push 9, 10, I think you should just have more experience before you go and shoot for that. But it's definitely doable.
Are you doing any like off-market stuff for your co-living homes or helping your clients find any off-market stuff, or is most of the stuff just on market?
Mostly on market. I do off market stuff, and I'll always look at the property to see if it can be co living. It's just most of the time it doesn't work to be co living, and just the location is so random when it does come from off market that it most of the time doesn't end up working out for co living.
Awesome. Okay. I guess tell us a little bit about, do you have any sort of repeat clients? Have you had people like buy a house hack with you and then buy a second house hack with you?
Yes, but they didn't always do co-living both times. Like they would do a house hack for just a long-term rental on a duplex is typically what a lot of people like to do. And then afterwards they would do either the same thing again or they would do a co-living one and then look to do a duplex after that. Just because people also want to do the scaling aspect of getting more units. And you can't really do
Yeah.
co-living in duplexes. It doesn't quite work out.
Okay, actually, let's talk about that. I do want to talk about something else too. But what have you seen as far as co-living in in smaller multi? So bigger than singles, but yeah, duplex, triplex, fourplex. You just haven't seen it work, or you haven't seen anyone try it, or
I just haven't seen it work. People may have tried it, but in Colorado Springs, a 2-1 on each side is around 450 to 200,000, and that gives you 4 bedrooms and 2 bathrooms. And you can't really add bedrooms very well because the square footage is probably like 800 to 1,000 per unit. And for co-living to really make sense at that price point, you're going to need to be hitting 7-8 bedrooms and 3-4 bathrooms in order to do that. That's why it mainly doesn't make sense. And then say you go to the triplex, fourplex range. The other thing you need to take note is most of these properties are downtown and on the west side, which is where parking is a lot trickier. And we can't build as much over there, so prices tend to increase very quickly. So your average fourplex downtown and west side is going to be around 750, 800 price point right now.
Okay.
If you find that out east, the price point will probably be closer to 600, I would say. But since it still is a fourplex, you would need to make sure that you're hitting numbers at 10 bedrooms if you're buying it at 600.
Gotcha. Okay. And you've mentioned something a couple times, and it's come up in my thoughts recently. Maybe we can talk a little bit about this thought of going deep on something versus going shallow. So you mentioned you have had repeat clients, but they haven't always done the same strategy. And that's what I saw too. Whenever I first moved to Colorado Springs and we bought our very first house hack, and I was going to your meetup all the time, and it was a lot of house hackers. A lot of people that I talked to would rent out rooms, like you were saying, when they live at the property, and they would leave and turn it into short term or midterm or vice versa. But a lot of people would mix strategies. Of those people that you're thinking of, what do you think their portfolio growth looks like from that approach, taking that sort of approach, versus if they would have gone all in on any strategy, short term, midterm, co-living? Do you have thoughts on that?
I'd say it's probably hasn't grown as fast just because if you're learning a different strategy every single time and not focusing on one and then just repeating, you have to learn new things. Like midterm to short term is about the same, but there's still differences on how you find your leads for your tenants, how you operate it is still slightly different. So you have to relearn those things. Same with a long-term rental. And if you go to co-living, there's different strategies and setting up of operations that are going to change for each one. And I think having to learn something new is what slows people down. Is because of that. And so they can't grow as fast. And compared to if they just did all the one thing, same strategy, they know how to do it. They're just going to repeat it and just add it into their current operations. It'll probably go smoother where they can scale faster.
Yeah. Yeah. Craig, what do you think? I think I've been 100% co-living. You've had strategies and properties with different strategies. Do you think that's hindered growth, or that was a good thing to diversify like that?
I think it's always interesting, right? And I still do have properties. I have some long-term rentals. I have some short-term rentals technically, but I like rent them out to somebody who then puts it on short-term rental. So I don't have it. I'm not affected by the variability of the Airbnb. And honestly, just how our strategy has evolved over the years is so what I feel like worked at that time. And I kind of just kept it. But I really like having strategies or houses that can do multiple things, like the versatility of them. So I'll usually actually take maybe not the best cash flowing co-living property and get like a slightly better cash flow if it also could work as a different strategy, just in case for some reason it doesn't work. Now, especially when co-living was in Colorado, there used to be a limit on how many unrelated people could live in a home. Regulation wasn't really sure. Now that it feels like co-living is moving in the direction of in favor of a lot of governments and rule setters, I'm more apt to do more co-living. And now co-living is really the only thing that I see working. I guess long story short, yes, I have a lot of different stuff because I feel like stuff worked over the years differently. But right now, I'm really only focused on buying co-living.
The other thing I would add is most properties won't work for co-living and for short-term rentals because of zoning in our city, because you have to be zoned for multifamily and it has to be zoned for multifamily, and it also has to be 500 feet away from another non-owner occupied short-term rental, which just makes it really tight on finding those types of properties in our city, which out east where co-living makes sense, doesn't make sense for a short-term rental.
One thing you said, Tanner, about duplexes not working, I would just say it doesn't work in your market. Because if you're listening to this in another market, I've seen markets where duplexes work fantastic, where triplexes work fantastic, where quads work fantastic. It all depends on like the construction of the quad in the duplex or whatever. If it's a bunch of 2-bed, 1-baths, yeah, it probably won't work. But if you've got a duplex that's 2 6-bed, 3-baths, and you're getting like a normal 6-bed, 3-bath might go for 500,000, but you're getting 12-bed, 6-bath for like 800,000, that is a deal, most likely. And then also it's easier to have 6 people living in a home than 8 people living in a home. There's kind of like that whole thought of it too.
Yeah, I think it's a good point, Craig. And I think everyone should take all advice with a grain of salt. Like in particular on this small multi topic we're talking about, whenever I wrote the co-living book for Bigger Pockets, I am pretty harsh against like small, or not even really harsh, honestly, not that harsh, but I am against small multi in that book. There's like just a few pages on it. But I think that was because of my experience in Colorado Springs. Yeah, I don't think the properties that exist there, like the supply just isn't quite right for co-living. It tends to be just in like worse parts of town just because of how Colorado Springs is set up. But I don't think anymore that it's universally true. When you read a second version of that book, you'll see different advice. But to take any advice you get with a grain of salt, because everything applies differently in different markets, and definitely be creative in how you guys approach things and solve problems yourself with the input of others. But this is one where I think I was wrong in the beginning about small multi. It applies to Springs, but maybe different elsewhere.
All right, Tanner, what mistakes are you seeing people make these days when investing in real estate, or in particular buying co-living properties?
I think a lot of people don't think about the windows a lot when they do purchase a co-living property for the rehab and how it's going to affect their numbers. Because a lot of times they're like, yeah, we can make this a bedroom easy. We don't have to do anything. Or we just put in a closet. I'm like, the window is super tiny, and like today's laws and for permitting and code, you do need to have a proper egress window. And that's probably going to add $7,000 to your rehab budget. And so once you calculate that and you have to put 3 of them in, then you're at 21,000 just like that, and the numbers don't really work anymore. So that's a big one that often comes up, I'd say.
I think the important thing here, guys, is like you hear Tanner talking about very specific co-living advice, very specific market advice. Like he's a very good co-living agent. So if you guys are in Colorado Springs, you know who to reach out to. But if you're in a different market, like you've heard Tanner talk about, yeah, the egress windows, very specific co-living thing. He knows about renting garages. We've talked about the different areas of town. He was even talking about boiler systems, and when he was talking about his expenses on his property, he was like, he listed out all these things and spit out the number 650, but it was actually like very calculated, knowing every little bit about his market. So you guys do want to find a co-living agent so that you can get that great advice that like I'm getting from Tanner when I'm buying mine. Do you have any advice for how to find an awesome agent like yourself in a different market that is maybe co-living specialized or something in that same vein?
I'd say definitely someone that invests in real estate themselves. If they have house hacked before, it's probably going to be someone great for co-living just because that translates very easily. And if they're getting out and networking, they host a real estate investor meetup. If they're on Bigger Pockets, that's a big place where a lot of investors tend to be, especially investor-friendly agents. I'd say that's the best place to go. I'd say first go to your local meetups and chat to all the agents, see what they do. And if they do something in the investment space, make sure to ask if it is in co-living and what experience they have with that. Because some agents don't know anything about co-living. They've heard of it, but they don't actually know what the numbers need to be like, how you should even go about the managing portion of it. And you want to make sure you're getting some good local advice too, not just an agent that knows how to invest in real estate.
How do you really determine if if they're just talking the talk?
Miller has this quiz that you can send to them, and
that is true. So we had this failed product. It's technically still live, and we have people signed up, so you guys can go check it out. But it's called Co-Living Connect, and it was like super thorough. Like Tanner signed up for it, maybe even Craig signed up for it, and it would like quiz the agent on, about bedrooms and permitting and zoning laws and all that kind of stuff. And if they were good, then they passed and they got listed. You can go find them as a great co-living agent. Anyway, it hasn't super taken off, so go check it out. But you'll probably want to do your own research also.
But there were some good questions on there about, it wasn't like too specific. I'd say there were some we argued over. No, it should have been this, should have been that. Yeah. I think I missed one or two or something like that. I think his wife didn't Elijah get like 20 out of 20 or something like that?
Yeah. She's the best co-living agent around, and she's unlicensed. So
She made the claim.
yeah.
Or if you could just ask them if they've read any co-living book or listened to any co-living podcasts, because then that'll spark their ideas of how co-living would transfer into their market and how it could be used correctly.
Yeah, and I've looked through a lot of markets. I'm a big data guy and all that, so I've looked in more markets than I've invested in by far. But maybe just like a rule of thumb that I've found so far, there isn't always a co-living specialized agent in a market. The strategy is still maturing, it's still up and coming. Eventually every market will have one, but like some markets at this point haven't had it or they're too small or whatever. What I've seen is in markets with like 100,000 people or less, I have had to get a little bit more creative in finding someone that can specialize in co-living, but maybe they haven't done it yet. When we're in like the Colorado Springs, the Denvers, that kind of thing, 400,000, 500,000 up, I think we definitely start to see some co-living specialized folks. But if you're in a smaller market where you haven't noticed a co-living agent, are there any other sort of qualities that you can look up for these agents that could indicate that they might be good at co-living also? Like, are there any other specialties that would, what's the second best option if there's no co-living person? Is it a short term? Is it a mid-term? Is it
Yeah, I'd
know,
say probably a short term is what I'd
Yeah.
say, just because they understand the operation side of things and they can be more specific and niche down. Just the same way you have to niche down on a specific short-term rental property, you kind of have to do that with a co-living property too. Because if they only do long-term rentals, it doesn't quite transfer over for the type of property, and it's very basic. There's not all the operations and the specific things that you should probably know from that agent in order to help you in the best and most efficient way. Midterm and short term are the same, so someone in that field, I would say, would be the best person to go to. And anything on the commercial side probably wouldn't translate at all.
Cool. Awesome. Tanner, what are you focused on these days? Are you trying to build and scale a big co-living portfolio? What are you up to?
I see it as the co-living of commercial real estate is what I'm trying to do, which is self-storage in my eyes of just what I've heard about co-living. I see self-storage as being like that in the commercial space. So I'm trying to go bigger and buy a self-storage facility is my current goals. Getting closer into the right direction, but it's been tricky. So trying to figure out how I can make that work is one of the goals for on like the whole buying and holding real estate side. Still an agent for now and trying to do some more off market stuff and do more fix and flips type of thing. And if one of those properties does work for a good co-living property, I'll definitely be calling Miller to get it, see if he wants to do it with me.
Yeah. So why are you calling self-storage the co-living of commercial real estate? What makes it similar in your?
Imagine like the house of a co-living property that's large in square foot. And if you have just land for commercial that's zoned, you can put a bunch of storage units on it, different sizes for based off of pricing, what you're seeing in demand. Same in co-living, you can create different bedrooms on the property house that you have in order to create as many as you can to increase revenue. And then you can have different amenities like in the living area, you provide all the toiletries and co-living. For self-storage, it would be like all the things to move, making it easy for having like in order to rent one. We have cameras too and stuff. That's how I see it as somewhat similar, just in being able to add more units to it to make it more profitable is the biggest thing and to make numbers work.
Awesome. I love it. Tanner, it's going to be, I'm sure you'll be successful. You're a successful real estate agent. I guess you'll still be being a successful real estate agent, but as a transition happens, if it happens, or wherever God takes you, I think it'll be, I'm sure, I have no doubt that you'll have tons of success doing it just with who you are and the value you provide. I think before we let you go, we got to get into the last part of our show, which is the big three.
The big three.
The big three. Put up.
The big three. I don't know if that was deep enough.
Yeah, no,
It wasn't. You gotta go lower.
Yeah. Or actually go higher. As high as
Every
you can
episode.
Yeah.
All right, I'll go deeper every episode. You go higher every episode, Craig.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mhm.
We already started off.
I'm still like sniffing paint from this office rehab, so I might be a little high right now. All right. Anyway, Tanner, what's
big
one
three.
roommate or
Let's hear
housemate
it.
story you'll never forget?
Oh my. I can tell you a bad one.
That's what we're going for.
The worse, the
Sure.
better.
Yeah, the worse the better. So I was house hacking my duplex at the time, and I rented to this guy who I turned one of my bedroom units that I also shared the bathroom with. And so it was a furnished rental. I eventually got a travel nurse to stay there, but before she came, it was this guy. and he found it on Airbnb. And the first week went fine. He paid on Airbnb, but then he was like, "Hey, I'm looking to stay a little longer. Can we work something out outside of Airbnb?" I'm like, "Yeah, sure, we can do this." I worked it out. He started staying, and he was just really messy and stopped paying very quickly after that. I was like, "Hey, dude, what's going on? We gotta fix this out." And then he stopped like seeing him in general, and he would just never be home. Whenever I would try and ask him about it, he wouldn't be there. And it went on for too long, we'll say, like a month or two. And it got to the point I'm like, dude, like I can't keep doing with this. And then the room started to smell really bad, and he had a dog too. And so I'm like, oh my goodness, what is happening inside this room? I don't even know. Eventually, I'm like, hey, you got to go. I'm not even living here anymore. You got to leave. And so kicked him out. I go and look at it, and it's just completely trashed, this room. I mean, it was fine because I was prepping to remodel the whole thing anyways, but he still didn't pay rent for that period. And I was like, if you're not getting rent, you can't live here. Basically had to evict him, but didn't officially go through it. He just listened to me and left, basically. So that was nice. So there wasn't too big of a problem with that. I just had a huge, disgusting mess in this bedroom that I had to clean up and throw everything away. So that was the only downside.
Yeah, that happens. You definitely gotta get the crappy people. Did you screen this person?
What was that?
Did you screen this person? Background check, credit check?
That's where my mistake was, because he had already been going on Airbnb, and I like got to know him a little bit. I'm like, he was a military guy. I'm like, oh yeah, he should be able to. I think it'll be fine. It was just supposed to be just a month or two is what it was supposed to be, because then he was planning to move to another place, and so I didn't screen him properly because it came through Airbnb, and I talked to him, and he was trying to get back on his feet from another situation where other stuff happened, and so should have screened them better. What's the lesson there?
Yeah, this is a really common mistake that I see, especially newer co-living people get into, is like, don't be a charity. A lot of the people that are looking for rooms to rent like are in tough times, and remember that by providing really low cost rooms for rent, you already are helping them. But by giving them like free rent, or by giving them like trying to hook them up, like you're doing them a disservice, because that's just not how the real world works. And we always say, keep your charity and your business very separate. If you want to be good in the world, donate to something, serve somewhere, but keep it totally separate from your business.
All right. Second question here. So Tanner, if you were starting a co-living community, which you will likely do someday when you cross over to the dark side, or if you have a client that's setting up their first co-living house, what do you think is the most important rule for the tenants? What's the first rule that you would set for the residents?
One of them that's my biggest pet peeve that I always had problems with in my properties when I house hack them was everyone needs to do their own dishes, because the kitchen always turns into a mess so fast and so quickly. So setting up chores for everyone to do, like taking out the trash, unloading the dishwasher, and making sure that everyone does their own, or at least puts them into the dishwasher, and then someone to start it and clean it up every single week, I'd say is the biggest thing. And helping out with those chores and making sure everyone's responsible for something will just help it flow better for the property as a whole, in my opinion.
Yep, I think that's a good one. Yeah, we have loads of kitchen issues. We definitely have to have rules and systems all around the kitchen for sure.
What's the best habit or system you've discovered that makes co-living smoother?
I would say I wasn't very good at my systems when I was house hacking. A little bit of a difficult one to think of.
Maybe I can twist it a little bit, and I don't know if you have an answer for this, but have you seen any of your clients buy co-living properties and not had a ton of success with it? And maybe is there a system that's
okay, that's a better way to put it for me.
Yeah, I say it way better than Craig usually.
So the biggest thing I see is that they just don't get tenants in that fast. And I'm like, why are you not? You should already have it posted on Facebook the day you buy it. And like once rehab's done, get it up and going. It should be on Facebook, Zillow, all the places that you're allowed to rent it. You should get it up there and trying to get it filled as fast as possible and start getting leads. Because if you're not getting any leads, then you aren't going to be able to properly screen people to have them start renting from your property. And so the speed to getting the lead and speed to getting it up on market for rent, I'd say is a big problem that people tend to not do. And you need to be very particular and on it for that type of thing. We always say in like the real estate agent space of speed to lead and race to face. So you need to, right when you have that lead available, is call them, text them, whatever you need to do to get them to apply. And then once they apply, you need to be calling them, seeing, hey, you're good, let's get you in, type of thing to get it moving.
Awesome. Definitely agree.
Cool.
Well done on that question, Miller. Helped me a lot.
Yeah. I couldn't leave you floundering over there by yourself. Craig's just looking at you like he'll figure it out eventually.
I was just like poking the fish out of water. Are you stupid? Yeah. You gotta swim, bro. Tanner, where can people find out more about you if they want to learn more, if they're looking for a house hack or a co-living in Colorado Springs, or if they got a self-storage deal or whatever, where do they find you?
I'm on Instagram, Facebook. You can find me at tanner.pyle, Pile. It's my last name. You can text me too. 602-881-7554 is my number. And I respond very fast to my texts and calls because I'm that good of an agent. So that's another thing that you should check out if you're talking to agents, is how fast they get back to you. That is a very big thing.
This is true. Communication is key. I heard one of my coaches tell, distrust fills the void of lack of communication. So at any time you're not communicating, the distrust of your client is growing. So be over-communicative versus under-communicative is a piece of advice that I would have. All right, Tanner, thanks so much for coming on, man. It's been absolutely great to have you. Good to see you. And yeah, keep getting out there, keep crushing it, and we'll talk soon.
Yeah, thanks, guys. It was fun.
And that was Tanner Pyle. Miller, what'd you think of Tanner?
All right. I still like
hair.
Tanner as much as I did before the episode started. My opinion of him has not decreased.
Has it increased, or do you think it's the same?
Okay, maybe it's decreased slightly because every day that goes by that he doesn't buy a co-living property, I'm like a little bit less interested. But for the most part, I think he's doing good things, right? He's helped us buy our co-living properties. He's helping lots of people buy co-living properties in Colorado Springs right now, honestly. And he's doing his own ventures and flipping and self-storage and all that at the same time. So super inspiring, and I think he has a lot of good tips for folks.
I love it. Yeah, his hair is pretty unreal too. You definitely can tell he can't.
Oh yeah, dude.
Yeah,
it's always he's super easy. Speaking of the bars from the first episode, I have since gone to many bars with Tanner, and he's super easy to find in a crowd. Tallest guy, the hair is taller than everyone else. Super easy.
I like how he was really, the first property that he got, he was or the second one, the quadplex that he talked about.
Yeah.
I loved how persistent he was and how he didn't give up. And like, you just hear that time and time again. It's, he got lucky because he got a $1.3 million seller finance sale. He saw an opportunity with something being on the property 100 days or something being on the market for 100 days. He also had called 400 people before that said no. So he knew the script. He kind of had it in his mind that to look for these these seller financing type deals. And then boom, he found one. I ended up bringing only $5,000 to the table to buy a $1.3 million asset. How's that for an ROI? If that thing appreciates 5%, that's like a 10x return on your money, right? Like that, like you start running those ROI numbers on low down payment deals, and it's like bonkers.
Yeah, and we didn't even go into this, but I'm in Tanner's accountability group and a mastermind that we're in. And this guy's making, for the self-storage ventures that he was talking about, he is also continuing that persistence. I think his goal is to call like 10,000 people over the quarter or something like that, right? So he's making hundreds of calls per workday, and just always the persistence has been key with that guy. And I've no doubt it'll prove out in any other strategy that he uses.
Love it. I absolutely love it. Awesome. This is a super fun episode. I'm super excited to continue to do this thing with you, Miller.
Yes,
Any
sir.
parting words for everybody before we?
No, I think the best thing here for you guys to take away is you need an agent like Tanner in whichever market that you're in. We gave a few tips on how to find those sort of folks, but I think it is paramount having an agent that you can lean on like Tanner. If you're in the Denver type market, right? Craig does that sort of work also. Having an expert on your team, you'll get deals that are far beyond those of your peers. For example, when we bought our first co-living property, Tanner was not our agent. And what do you know? That's not our best property. They've gotten much, much better since we took him on. So better agent, better investments.
100%. Yeah. Honestly, if you even just Google investor friendly agent, insert your market here, investor friendly agent, Colorado Springs, investor friendly agent, Denver, I bet you'll find probably at least a top 2 or 3 that you can interview.
Yeah. And you'll already be leagues ahead of the guy who just looked on Zillow and grabbed the top performing agent or whatever.
Yep. Totally. Awesome. If you made it this far, thank you all for listening all the way through. We're super stoked to bring you more and more co-living type content to help you with your co-living investments. If you haven't already, please share this with your friends, leave us a 5-star review, and shoot me and Miller a DM whenever you leave us a review. Or if you just want to talk to us on Instagram, I'm the Fi Guy, Miller.
Yeah, and I'm at Miller McSwain.
And let's see you next time.
Next time.